I don't know what the right wording is to describe this, but it's when you come into something with so many preconceived notions, preconceived ideas, it really doesn't matter what you're about to do, eat, watch, read, because you've already kind of made up your mind before you got there. I think that comics has this problem in a pretty big way. And I think it's impacting things positive and negative, but ultimately negative. Let me get into why. Hey everybody, this is Perch. I notice this with my videos from time to time because depending on how I word the title, and my titles of my videos have been getting more weird and kind of clumsy, and that I'm trying to second guess the person who's going to look at the title, not watch the video, and make up their mind about what it says. And it's like, you know, it becomes tough when you're arguing with somebody passionately about something that they think you said that you didn't say, or something that they assumed you said because there's this and this and this and this background. By the way, if people are like, hey, he's talking about me, I'm not talking about you. I'm talking generically. And I'm making a bigger point. And that's, as people, we're intended and designed to make judgments based on little bits of input we get. The biggest one is history. If, for example, you pick up 10 Spider-Man comics and they're all terrible, you hate every single one, your assumption before you even pick up the 11th comic is it's going to suck. Is that unfair? No, it's not unfair. People will tell you that it is, though. They'll say, well, you haven't read it. How can you judge? Well, you can judge because history. You do have a judgment you're going to make. But of course, you should be, as a human being, you should be open to being proven wrong. If you, for example, just be honest about your biases. I think if you come into something and you say, yeah, Spider-Man sucks. And somebody's like, well, have you read the latest issue? Don't lie. No, I haven't read the latest issue. Why? Because I read 10 issues. They were terrible. And so I haven't signed up for the 11th one. Now, maybe that 11th one is where everything turns around and suddenly the story becomes genius. Could be. It's not unfair if you don't want to give it that chance if you've been burned 10 times. It's also not unfair for somebody to tell you, hey, you don't really know because you haven't read it. That's true. But both things can be true at the same time. And I think that's where, we have a problem in many cases with comics, both positively and negatively. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, I think that there's a lot of people who have been burned by things in comics who now are predisposed to assume they're terrible. Is that fair? I don't know if fair plays into it. But it's life. I mean, if you've been really, really frustrated or really burned by a bunch of things in comics, it's not the craziest, most unrealistic thing in the world to assume that this new thing is going to suck. At the same time, it also cuts the other way, which is there are people who, they say that the comic is wonderful or great for all the wrong reasons. What are those wrong reasons? Well, maybe they like maybe they like the Twitter of the creator. Maybe the creator. So I'll use this as an example. This is just an example. That's it. There are people who love Gail Simone. They go to her Twitter. They like the way she kind of fights the Nazis. I don't know, whatever you want to call it. They like her sarcasm. They like that she's punchy. They like her sense of humor. All right, nothing wrong with that. Therefore, when Gail Simone's on a comic, that comic is wonderful. It's great. Now, they may not have ever read that comic. In fact, in many cases, people don't. They like the creator. They want to support the creator. That's not a bad thing. But it does create a situation where if somebody is out there taking a piss at that comic, that the person will jump to Simone's defense, having not read the comic. No, this is great. This stuff is great. All her comics are great. Well, maybe you've read it. Maybe you haven't. This is no different than the other direction. It cuts positively. It cuts negatively. But the one thing about the positive that I think is dangerous is that if somebody is just predisposed to like something, they're not being honest about its flaws. Now, the people who are overly negative also aren't being honest, but the difference is the people who are overly negative tend to still be engaged. The people who are overly positive tend to not be engaged beyond the person. They tend to kind of just ignore some of the problems that are going on entirely. And that can be unhealthy if there are big systemic problems there. They need to be addressed, they need to be brought into the light, they need to be looked at and focused on. And if you're just going to sit there and believe everything is rosy and perfect, it can cause a problem. And I think we've seen that in comics. I think we've seen some of these problems play out in a pretty bad way. I think that in comics, there's a lot of cases of arrested development where normally, based on the market conditions, based on other things, these products would have evolved. They would have gotten better. They would have transformed. But instead, there becomes almost a belief of if you speak negatively about the comic, about a creator, about whatever it might be, if you talk bad about it, then you're somehow betraying comics. You're somehow, a hater. And I think that's gone to new levels with some of the commentary around you are, if you dislike the creators, you're a toxic fan, or you're this or you're that. Maybe you are. I'm not saying that some of these people aren't nuts. Obviously, some people are nuts. The goal here is not to say there are no people who are nuts. But if you're so quick to dismiss those kind of criticisms, it entrenches you to almost take the opposite things can't change side. The danger of that is there are things in comics that need to change or need to evolve or need to improve. Examples of this, I think the lack of a digital strategy is wrapped up in this. The argument gets into, well, digital is, it's collector based, collectors won't like it. There's lots of reasons why digital is wrong, which, ignores the obvious. Digital does have to happen one way or another. Changing art quality is a factor. There has been a shift in art. Ignoring that and saying, no, comics are perfect, it prevents anyone from reasonably looking at solutions. All it does is it keeps this fight going. Now I can use the same analogy, and everything I'm saying applies to restaurants, to movies, to books, to everything. This is human nature. But it's important, as important as it can be, that yes, acknowledge the fact you do have an opinion. You do have some prejudged belief. That's not an ugly thing. It's a fact of life. As humans, we're wired to do that. At the same time, we have to be prepared, honestly prepared, not in this kind of dickish way where it's like, if you want me to change my opinion, you prove me wrong. It's not about proving anyone wrong. It's that you, by yourself, as an individual, if you get different information, a different set of data, open your mind, change your mind. I guess be open to changing your mind is different from change your mind. Those are two different statements. And I think with comics, there's a lot that is good out there that we miss because we're closed off to it. And there's a lot of obvious improvements that can be made, but we're closed off to the negativity as well. That keeping things in a middle ground status quo, I think that blows it all up for us. That's my opinion anyway. What do you think? Leave a comment below. Like, dislike. Maybe you hit dislike before you ever listen to this video and you're proving my point. Whatever. To do whatever you feel like, but your comments are welcome. Yeah, thanks for listening.